Thank you for tuning into this edition of the MSR Forefront. I'm Stefanetta Harmon. I'm excited tonight to kick off our conversation with Steve Floyd. He's a senior advisor for the Agape Movement, a South Minneapolis-based organization whose mission is to literally serve as a bridge, a buffer between the police and the community. They are out there protecting, connecting, and creating neighborhoods, bringing the neighbor back to the hood, as Steve says. So please join us in this evening's conversation. Hey, Steve. Thank you so much for jumping on for this important conversation, about 38th in Chicago, that the area that has now become, closed off memorial to Goerge Floyd and his memory, and then also like a symbol for all of the unrest that's been happening in the community in Minneapolis and globally at this point. You are a consultant with Agape, and I would love to know more about the work that you're doing in that area with the organization, and then your specific role. So I guess first thing is just, can you tell us a little bit about Agape?
Well, the Agape Movement is a third level of Agape, which we started doing about 35 years ago. And first of all, it started as I would do assemblies in high schools and all of the middle schools in Minneapolis on Agape Love. And this would be a one-man show that talked about love and how people need to come together and give them an understanding of what Agape Love is all about, which is an unconditional love. And it's also a love in action. It's a love that's really performing and showing, in this case, community, how we should be amongst each other and with each other as far as unconditional love, inclusiveness, and all of that goes together. And from there, that word got out, obviously, because it was with all of the over 15,000 students or more that understood that. And then a little time later, we started what we called the Agape Champions of Agape. And this was an outreach to gang members. And we had well over 200 and some gang members from both sides, all different cliques, that had joined together the Agape Champions of Agape. And that consisted of a weekly meeting with most of the guys on life skills. And then I would take them on trips. I would take a bus load to Chicago. I took them to camps. And this is when all of these gang members were younger kids, in their teens. And then from there, it kind of slowed down. The message was out. I was on something else, traveling as a photographer around the world all these years. So when the Goerge Floyd situation happened, up on 38th Street, a lot of those older guys who were there just started, about 5 or 6 of them, started to say, hey, let's protect 38th Street. And they the ones that started putting up barricades because people were coming into 38th Street for all kind of reasons, whether it was to make money, take advantage of the spot in a lot of ways. And at that point, this was not being effective to the community, for the people who were in the community. People would come in, set up their stands and make money, and we never see them anymore. No contribution to the community, no contribution to the Floyd family, and so it started that. And so then when that came about, a few of the guys who are not active gang members started saying, hey, let's develop this security and let's call it Agape Movement. And so then they said, well, that's Steve Floyd. You have to check with him. So I was just up there taking pictures of the square at times. And then one of them came up to me and asked me, could we use Agape? And my words to them, and obviously finding out why, what do you want to use it for? And then they told me about security. And I said, well, here's my problem with that. If y'all going to use that word and y'all understand what that word has meant and what it means, then you could use the word for that. But we don't want you out here doing security and then doing the day and then doing the BS at night, from what you all do. And at that point, they understood. They said, well, why don't you come and help us and lead us like you did way back when we started Agape and Agape Champions of Agape. So I committed with a lot of rules and a lot of understanding. And from there, we started getting the guys together, and then we started taking them through training, verbal judo training. We took them mental health training. We taken them through de-escalation training, mediation training, mental health training. And so we've been doing that for the last 8 weeks. and watching the guys transform. And so that allowed us to develop, I developed a model called transforming street energy into community energy.
Right.
Teaching them how to be community, teach them how to protect, teach them how to approach people on the square. So we started that, and it started happening. And obviously you're dealing with young men who struggle to transform, if you understand that. People just don't turn overnight, but they were really committed. And then with, I guess my biggest, not surprise or shock, but Reggie Ferguson, who has been a long time leader around their community, you know, whether it was, you know, with organization on the street, and basically his life turned around years ago. And so from that point, he's been working to build the community and build the community. So him and I got side by side because I believe him, I trust him. I don't work with anybody or any organization that is doing dirt. So I trust him, and I say I really, he inspired me even more by the change in his life. And he could tell you his story if that's possible, but from what I've seen, all the pain and the guilt that he feels now in his life for what he was involved in. And it's genuine so much that this guy just won't stop working and to help and commit himself into the community and working for the committee. He just constantly keeps going. And from there, we started building on it, and guys started getting trust. So what we would do is basically control, talk to people on 38th. We would use it first as to talk to people who were coming from all over the world. And we would take their names down and ask them, how do you feel up here? And so that was our other project. And then basically it just built. And then we started trying to slow down. Well, we did stop a lot of the shooting, which was a lot of people. See, people don't understand. Up on 38th, you know, there's a lot of homeless people, right, that are part of the support team or the protest team. There's a number of homeless young people out there that, and what we found is that that's where a lot of the mischievement and mishaps would come from. And so we basically kind of dealt with that. And then when the young lady was killed, the pregnant young lady was killed, that drew a lot of crowd simply for a memorial and grieving her. But at the same time, it kind of interfered and shut down that part of 37th and Elliott and that alley, that the community was affected by it. And as we saw that, we just started trying to slow that down and then getting that down. Then we started meeting the neighbors, and then we started going and talking to the neighbors and letting them know and talk to them about the situations that was happening in their back alleys and, you know, the problems that they were having getting to their homes. And we started that relationship. And from there, it just kind of built. We slowed down the area in 37th Street, but it's still activity at night.
Like how many in the group are out at night?
It's about 15 to 20.
Okay. And
not just on that block, because we also joined with the Minneapolis program by the Office of Violent Prevention. And so we joined with them. I myself, I work for Change Inc. I'm a mental health practitioner for Change Inc. And that's been our duty, or my duty out there with these groups, to start working even on the mental health aspect and allowing them to understand and to see the reasons why all these problems exist. Because there's a lot of people that go around, even in our group, that say, what's wrong with this person? Why is they like that? Why they won't change? Why is this? And I said, let's bring it to a simpler question that allow us to be empathetic about the young men and women who are out there on their street that is, you know, doing these things. I say, it's not what's wrong with them, it's what happened to them in their life. And once we started thinking about what happened to them, what has caused them the problems, the trauma, or whatever it may be that causes them to do and react the way that they do. And what that caused was a lot of empathetic moments, and trying to really look at a person as possibly who this person could be and what has happened in this person. And so as we started practicing that, things got more and more open. We were able to build bigger and solid relationships. But what we also noticed is that anytime crimes were committed outside the square, whether it was carjacking, whether it was armed robbery, whether it was about 4 nights ago, Giacchino Pizza, we got on our citizens' alarm that a person was assaulted at Giacchino. So we rushed down there. And when we got there, we come to find out that 3 young men, which were actually dressed up like women, came into the store, harassed the people, and then snatched their tip jar and rushed out and headed towards the square. So when we got there, they showed us a video, and we eventually went back out and we got to the square. And what I'm saying is that a lot of people do these crimes and then they head to the square to camp out because, for one, they know that police officers are not going to come in there. So two, they just using it as a hiding place. So we waited, and as we got back to the square, we noticed that those 3 individuals showed up, and they sat around the campfire. They started getting involved with the people, and then we walked up and noticed them. And then working with Marsha, I forget Marsha's last name.
Oh.
I pulled her aside and I told her who these individuals were, what they had just done. So she basically has a GoPro camera on. She clicks it and goes over and engage and gets involved. And she just basically says, hey, you know, what's your name? Where do you live? And then she told them, she said, well, you know, you all on camera. And they said, what? And they say, yeah, Chiquinos. So they got up and left and ran and they got out of there. But those are the type of things and connections that we connected with. We got the information about who they were, and they gave us their names and all of that. It wasn't turned into the police. It was turned into Chiquinos, and then they would have to do that. But in that protection, that part of protection, that's what we're about. Trying to find out the people who used the square as a hiding place, cut that out, stop out of the shooting and the violence and break-ins and things that has been going on. And we've been researching and doing a lot of that about that, finding out people who have been affected by it, show up as security to, if they have to leave because they've been threatened to have cars jacked. So it's things like that. I'll go on and on, but that's what basically it looks like for us when we're out there.
And you're doing pretty much a 360 healing from the brothers who are coming on the street with you. They're going through their ongoing healing and training and transformations with you. And then you're taking that same practice and principle and giving it to the people on the street or in the neighborhoods and going. So it's you know, Sankofa going, looking back and bringing everybody forward. And that's amazing.
Yeah, it's like learning how to be a community in that sense.
Yep. Right. And, you know, you said earlier before we hopped on with that you were out till 2 o'clock in the morning. So this isn't just like hey, I'm going to do this on Mondays and Thursdays. This is an every night situation, or what does this look like?
It's every night. And even with the Minneapolis, we're out there from at least 5 o'clock in the evening till 12 o'clock at night. And then it tends to go over. You know, when we offer that clock, we on our clock again, you know, and up there until the unrest or uprising, whatever is going on up there. And it was just a typical thing last night that guys show up, they get at it, you know, we do what we can to calm it down.
Okay. In the news, you see 38 Chicago, 38 this or whatever that corridor is considered. Oh, it's a crime spike. It's all these different things that are happening over there here. Is it really spiking or is it just getting attention right now?
It's not spiking. Actually, it's declining a lot. Okay. Big time, it's declining. And because of that work of relationship building and talking to a lot of the young men and women around there, it's becoming more of a solid community. And then as we get the neighborhood involved, we have a volunteer program that we deal with people outside of the square in the community, in their own homes. And we call that putting the neighbor back in the hood. And so making those kind of contacts and letting continue to be a neighborhood again, getting these people to volunteer, to show up themselves, come out of their houses. You know, that's the best way to do it. Don't hide in your houses because more things are going to be taken advantage of. Now they're having meetings in alleys, community meetings. They're having them in people's driveways, you know, just to be a presence out there open on the block. And that helps because when people are out, people leave. They don't want to be. If they're doing anything that is mischievous or whatever, they're not comfortable. And so it's teaching community how to come out, how to be a community, how to talk, how to share with each other.
Okay. And then you mentioned Minneapolis. You've also, you know, Marsha, it's Howard. I remember her last name, Howard, right? Because she's the community liaison officer, or I'm not quite exactly sure her title, but around that. And so you all, different organizations have come out on the block, really working, getting people involved. What are the tools and resources that you still need access to do better or to be able to do all the things that you want to do?
Well, it grows and grows. Mainly now we don't want to develop a hotline, because a part of what we're doing is doing our own community policing, and as we try to understand how to build that, we don't call the police unless it's a serious crime or a serious violent situation.
Mm-hmm.
But we do what we can to kind of build that in the community as far as policing ourselves. What does that look like? How do you make people feel in policing themselves? So those are things that we are building up to continue to make that community solid. And I kind of forgot the second part of the question.
Well, the tools and resources, because even earlier you
Yeah.
mentioned that you got like a little like you got a tip to go run somewhere, and I'm like, are they like calling you? Are they texting you? Like, how did you even get that tip to go there? And then like, what other tools and resources to make what you're doing?
We got our tip from the Citizen app, who keeps us
okay.
aware on a lot of things, and that's not enough. But what we're doing, we do have an office on 3741 Chicago Avenue, which we're remodeling, building. Matter of fact, we're painting right at this moment, over there, and I'm getting ready to head over there now. And what we're setting up is a call hotspot place.
Okay.
That we're going to be there, and when situations and things are happening in the community, they'll call us. Because a big part of, I don't believe in defunding the police. I don't believe that, but I believe in directing funds, from situations and things within the police department, or however it's pronounced, or whatever they take the money from or get money from.
Right.
And that's what we believe in. And so our tools is at this hotspot in our house, we want phone calls, hotlines that we'll be able to show up and communicate. And we getting things like walkie-talkies and things. And the way we'd want to set up our offices is that we want an overview map of the South Minneapolis area, picking hotspots, picking where things are going down, picking where things are safe, just to know the neighborhood and build that and expand that out until we have more and more people who are willing to work. We have plans and goals that, since the public school system and some of the places around that area need security, who normally hire officers, we want to train our guys to be able to be that security, especially in the couple of schools that is in that area, Bancroft and Wilder and Richard Green. And we want our men to be, instead of them hiring police, we want our guys to be trained to be able to be into these schools to help and support, because it helps our community better. Because when they see these guys in their school, they'll also see them on the street. And seeing them on the street, we want to develop outreach programs for the kids. And all of these young men who are older men now, who used to be in these neighborhoods now, doing their thing, now it's changing and the process is changing, that we want to benefit kids. We want to do camps. We want to start basketball programs. Goerge Floyd's situation has woken up a lot of these young men of what to do and how they feel they should be given back to the community. And that's what we're working with, because when you have that openness and then you get that transformation that starts, that's where our struggle is. Because again, people don't turn around all night, turn around. So a part of things that we need is we're getting, the tools to have a place to meet, the tools to have a place to congregate when there's issues and situations, a place where we can get calls from within the community to develop that rapport with dealing with the problems as if police would. We don't need police officers with guns showing up at domestic situations in homes, unless if it gets out of hand to where people have guns and they're ready to shoot, then that becomes out of our league. We don't need police showing up at places with guns when there's a mental health situation. That we want to be able to calm it down so people just don't end up dead just because of the circumstances that they're in. So that is a part of that. We want to have a police academy that we're training young kids. We don't want to call it a police academy, but some sort of academy that kids can learn what to do in their community, who to trust, how to, respond to certain situations, and how we respond to them when they're in trouble, when they're doing things. And so it's a buildup, it's learning, and the progression is tough, but we're willing to do it.
That's awesome. How can we as a community get involved, support, help, show up? Where do we go? What do you want to see more of from us?
But I think the more involvement, and involvement is in a lot of ways, like we talk about, involvement is being out, involvement when there's things going on. Come out, you know, and what we want to do, give people your volunteer shirt, you know, show yourself, show the numbers. People come out and live and then support each other in the community, you know, openly. You know, look at it as a village. Everything that goes on in a village, a small Black Wall Street in that area. How we involve and support one another, you know, support Black businesses and bringing those things up. So that is a big part of how we get in the community involved, making ourselves known, building some trust, building some people who recognize us. We go by people's homes and they be so happy to see us and so excited. And again, what can we do? How can we march with you all? Can we make phone calls? Can we do things in the office? And we like, yes, this is a lot of things that's showing community being community. You know, like I say, putting the neighbor back in the hood and making it a neighborhood again. So it's all those little small things that were so simple back in the day that if we just coordinate our area where we live and we inspire another area to coordinate themselves in that way, it begins to expand. And so we want to demonstrate that as a whole. And we're like I say, we're learning as we're going, you know, more resources of resources of things of what we need. We're learning.
Okay. I mean, I just see you light up as you talk about this, and it's so inspiring. You don't even understand. Just to, you know, to have brothers out on the street to really come up and step up for the community, and as you said, turn street energy into community energy is powerful. As we close out on this, I do want to know though. So I know you mentioned a little bit about not necessarily defunding the police, but redirecting some resources to the community to empower groups and organizations like yourself. How is the city supporting what you're doing right now?
We had the city with the Minneapolis, that's little fresh support. I mean, it's small, but we use it as a training for ourselves. Okay. Even by what they're giving us, with the hope of building Agape Movement that we can receive funds, because this is basically like a 14 to 20 week program. Okay. And then it shuts down. And then all the teams that are on the north side, there's 2 teams, and then there's the uptown team, and then there's the 38th team, south side team. You know, then those teams are going to be on their own. Agape Movement is, as I understand and as I think, is probably one of the only organizations after Agape Movement that'll still be moving, that'll still be doing this process. There may be others that we don't know about, and we think it is being developed, that they're going to be a movement of people doing that. So the city has been supportive, but the problems that we understand that we have is that when we put on those orange shirts, because we all have orange shirts on and it has outreach on the back. And we are really, this is Agape Movement as well. We are buffer between the police and the community or protesters. So we come between to make sure that protesters are not getting out of hand, violent, want to destroy things, when set fires. It's okay to protest. Peaceful. So what happens is that we had a situation night before last at the 5th precinct in South Minneapolis. There was a group of protesters, you know, a few hundred of them, just marching the street at night, heading towards 38. We had no problem with that. Matter of fact, we even got in front to lead them in there so it could be a peaceful protest. And then at one point, somebody said that let's go to the 5th precinct in that group. And we like, well, we're not about that, because they want to go and destroy the precinct. And then we was there protecting 38. They went to the 5th precinct. They got arrested. And all of a sudden there was a group, the uptown group of Minneapolis entered the 5th precinct to the buffer between the police and the protesters. So the Minneapolis people started getting arrested along with the people. And so what happened is a phone call came in from the city and said, no, they're this, because they brought police in that night from Wisconsin,
right,
St.
because
Paul,
of Chauvin's release, right, yeah. Yeah,
to identify us, who they didn't know who we were. So what happened is that when they rounded everybody up, and then they let the orange people go the orange shirts go when they found out who they were, now the protesters are saying, and this is a part of what we were out last night dealing with. Then the protesters started saying they're working with the police. So we walked up on a group of protesters last night and they surrounded us and started talking about we work for the police. And we knew a number of these people were protesters that be up on 38th Street. And so our guys got really offended by this, because we see the problem that it can cause.
Mm-hmm.
That people just see an orange shirt. We weren't up there at the 5th precinct, so it wasn't us, but they
Right.
attacked us, and then they got verbally insulting to us. And so most of the guys that are with us, with our verbal judo,
Right.
thank God we trained that. We learned that because it was about to go down. And if it wasn't for us, just maintain as much as we could, because we out there, basically our hearts were broken because we showed up to join them and to protect, and hey, here's another group. Let's go to support them. And then they just, boom, came at us by what they thought they saw and misunderstood. And so it caused a huge conflict all night too. They tried to force us to leave. And this was up on 29th in Chicago, across from the Global Market. And so we got really offended. So we're dealing with that all night, because after that, they tried to come into the Goerge Floyd Square, and we wasn't letting them. We said, no, y'all not bringing that here.
Right.
We showed y'all knew who we were, y'all know us, and y'all just destroyed this unity that we are developing. You know, I mean, just calling us all kind of names and just degrading our movement and who we were. And eventually it got squared away. It was a bunch of young people, but you know, we told y'all can't come in the square at this point and do this until y'all learn how. We don't want people going up on people, threatening them, talking about burning things down. That's not what we're about. And so that's why we were out there last night. And what we see from a therapeutic side, I mean, when we walk in these streets with these ex-gang members who are not active anymore, who are in their 40s and 50s, you know, who are men now, who want to give back, I can't explain how amazing it is when we're talking and walking, and the memorizations of when we were young and having the joy of talking and creating that camaraderie. And it's just it's an amazing thing to have men talking and trying to develop new ideas and say, man, remember we used to hang out here, and all that reflection helps motivate them to doing right. And one time we had a kid that got a check, and he wouldn't even cash the check. He said, man, this is the first check I've ever gotten for working in the community. And just to see that type of thing change in an individual and transform to understand what it's like to be in the community. And so that's what fires me up. That's what has me back out there, and seeing that we have an opportunity to help influence and transform somebody's life.
Wow. Thank you. I mean, that's it right there. These are the stories that we want to see and reflect and share that are happening out in the community, instead of just all the doom and gloom, all the we're broken, but we're not, we're healing.
No, not at all.
And it's brothers and organizations and groups like yours that are really impacting and giving people a viewpoint and a different chance of hope and moving forward. So thank you so much. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you'd like to add anything, let me know.
Well,
otherwise, I'm just grateful.
That's it. That's it. Don't get me started.
I know, right? But I'm grateful. Thank you for this. I look forward to bringing other brothers from the conversation from Agape Movement. For people who are tuning in, visit agapemovement.com. So, excuse me, it's the agapemovement.com, where this group is transforming street energy into community energy. And you can find out ways to get involved, connect, and just come out and support. It doesn't all have to be about pain and responding to trauma. This is also about community building.
Exactly. And our website is constantly we're working on it now, but it's a little bit, enough information, but we're making it a lot better.
Well, there's
we're showing the guys, and guys that graduate and get their certificate and proud and happy when they graduate from our training. So it's a real good, positive thing. So thank you, Stefanetta.
All right. Thank you, Brother Steve. I appreciate you.